Currently, armwrestling finds itself in an era dominated by global supermatches, mainstream visibility, and the dominance of East versus West, and is by many regarded as the most prestigious and competitive period armwrestling has ever seen, with Levana Saginashvili standing at its peak. But some may argue that there were even bigger monsters in the past. Before this era came to be, there was someone else sitting on the armwrestling throne.
Dennis Cıplenkov.
Dennis Cıplenkov.
Dennis Cıplenkov, one of, if not the strongest left-hand arm wrestler.
I used to call him Dennis Chernobyl.
Dennis, to me, is probably the most powerful man to ever step up to an arm wrestling table.
Entire structure, just so strong.
Left-handed, who would you say is the GOAT?
Of course, Dennis. There's no argument for unbelievable power.
This absolute juggernaut, nicknamed the Russian Hulk, became one of the most dominant competitors armwrestling had ever witnessed, overwhelming entire generations of pullers with record-breaking arm power, incredible hand size, and a frame that seemed almost unreal. At his peak, Cıplenkov weighed nearly 150 kilos, with biceps measuring an astonishing 63 centimeters. And in the end, his dominance couldn't be stopped by a rival, only with time itself and strain on the body that comes in the pursuit of greatness. So this is the story of Dennis Cıplenkov. Every legend has some kind of a beginning, and for Dennis Cıplenkov, it starts in Kryvyi Rih, Ukraine, where he was born on March 10, 1981. Growing up, he stood out early, not for armwrestling yet, but simply for raw strength and also massive hands. At just 6 years old, he began exploring a variety of sports clubs.
I did judo, kettlebell lifting, played football because those were the sports available there. If there had been powerlifting, maybe I would have gone for that, but it wasn't offered. So I chose kettlebell lifting, 16, 24, 32 kilograms. I'm a candidate master of sport.
In 1996, he was introduced to competitive arm wrestling after attending a tournament organized by Igor Moiseev. And what started as an observation quickly turned into participation, as soon after he began entering competitions himself, and he would immediately show promise.
It was easier to organize arm wrestling than kettlebell lifting. There wasn't really any technique to speak of. It was all just brute strength.
In 1998, he won the Junior Arm Wrestling Championships of Ukraine in the 65 kilo category on the right hand. 2 years later, he would even go on to win the European Championships in Turkey. But in his homeland, the path to a professional sports career would get blocked by a lack of financial support.
In Ukraine, parents sometimes went 6 months without getting paid. Kind athletes helped us get to competitions. The federation didn't pay for anything.
With a European title under his belt, but no food on the table, he made the difficult decision to leave Ukraine for Moscow, unaware that his greatest strength was yet to be discovered. Dennis arrived with a Ukrainian passport and a dream. But the reality was not sweet.
I came here to study, but I ran into the problem that people from CIS countries had a tough time here, let's put it that way, because basically only Russians could study for free, and people from CIS countries and everyone else had to pay. So I had to work to survive in this city, in this country.
He'd have no choice but to grind his way through life, until fate led him to the Marcus Aurelius Club. After completing his certification courses, he began working there as a trainer. And it was here that he met the club's director and his future mentor, Vladimir Turchinsky, a legend in the strongman community known by the nickname Dynamite.
As a director, he was tough, strict. Sometimes I even got a smack on the head from him.
But Turchinsky also quickly realized Denis's potential, introducing him to Silovoi Extreme, a strongman league Turchinsky led both as a central figure and as president.
Honestly, he was like a real father to me and a coach and a friend. Naturally, I was always by his side, watching how he did everything. Well, I guess I liked the way he approached everything, so I took note of it for myself. He was very good at reading people. He would immediately say, you can deal with this person, you can't deal with that one.
Under his guidance, his focus shifted on becoming the strongest man in Russia.
Back then, the exercises were kind of funny, almost like loading sacks.
Dynamite lived for that atmosphere. A showman at heart, he knew how to bring out Denis's strengths, and sometimes even shape the events around him.
I asked Volodya for a table. I said, let's at least do one arm wrestling exercise so I can win at least something. There were about 12 people competing, and in the end I actually won.
While the Strongman League was still very active, Denis almost accidentally entered a tournament in 2008 in Lotoshino.
I call Mazurenko and say, I want to compete at Nemirov. He goes, well, last time it was easier, but now to compete at my event, you have to win some stage in Russia first. And the first stage was in Atasheno, so I prepared for it, trained for about 2 months, went there and won.
And that immediately drew the attention of Kote Razmadze, the man who coached the Olympic bobsledder, multiple-time gold medal winner and armwrestling icon in the name of Alexei Vovoda. Training with Vovoda sharpened Denis's raw power into a weapon. He began to understand his own physiology and structure at the table, particularly his left arm, which felt indestructible once it locked into position. This training would quickly bear its fruits, as in June of 2008, Denis Cıplenkov would go on to face the rising armwrestling star, Andrei Pushkar.
I was really nervous, honestly, I was scared. Basically everyone there considered him the leader.
Every time, Andrei would hit faster, but once Denis caught the hit, he'd overpower Pushkar with his incredible arm power. (6-0). This match would also mark the start of their incredible rivalry. Later that year, Denis would go on to prepare for the prestigious Nemirov World Cup, an armwrestling tournament which only featured the best of the best, competing against each other in a tournament bracket for great prizes.
In November 2008, it was Denis's time to shine, and he would absolutely dismantle everyone.
Well, at least on the left arm, because a huge opponent stopped him in his tracks on the right.
Back when I was a kid in Kryvyi Rih, my hometown, when I had just started training, everyone, of course, talked about Brzenk. The first stories were all about Brzenk. Naturally, he was everyone's idol. He even starred in a movie. Everyone wanted to find the movie and watch it as soon as possible. And then suddenly you're going up against him.
The world watched as Cıplenkov faced the ultimate arm wrestling legend, no other than John Brzenk. John would be able to take hand control from Denis, with Denis being unable to get his cup fully engaged. Denis wouldn't be deterred though, returning to Nemirov in 2009, once again destroying everyone on the left, but having to pull out mid-tournament from the right hand due to an injury. Once his arm healed up, one of the most significant matches of Denis's early career followed. A high-profile right arm supermatch against John Brzenk. In 2008, it was a dominant win for John. In 2009, Denis had to pull out of the tournament, and now the question had to be answered. Did Denis surpass John? And was he at the arm wrestling peak? Well, here's the answer. The first round, John would once again force Denis to try to contain with his wrist and secure a 1-0 victory. And sadly for Denis, this formula would go on to work every single round.
Every bit of his body, but Brzenk pulling him down.
Eventually, John would even be able to take the match inside, overpowering Denis there as well, which is unbelievable considering the bicep strength, the structural integrity of Denis's arm. The way John was able to hold Denis's surges is truly unreplicatable. It would show that Denis wasn't at the top just yet, but Denis had other reasons for why he didn't take the win on that day, pointing out key factors for his loss which were outside of his control.
The flight was 16 hours. Well, you could say I was not 100% prepared at all. I just felt completely drained.
But the match simply highlighted how much is needed to be at the top of the sport in arm wrestling and what Denis would need to do to reach it. In December of 2009, tragedy struck.
Tichinski's lawyer. I was surprised that a lawyer was even talking to me, to be honest. What happened? I pick up the phone, people are training, everything is going on as usual. And when they told me, I was like, okay. That's it, I was paralyzed, tears started streaming down my face. And the people who were standing nearby, they were all looking at me, not understanding anything, and I couldn't say a word. After roughly 10 or perhaps 20 seconds had passed, I somehow painfully and finally managed to force the words out of my mouth. Turchinsky has died.
The sudden death of Vladimir Turchinsky devastated Denis and the entire Russian strength community, and Silovoi Extreme would begin to collapse without its central figure. With strongman competition fading and his leader gone, Denis made a decisive shift, fully committing to arm wrestling. From that point on, the Hulk would become one of the most dominant pullers the world had ever seen. In 2010, he'd meet John Brzezinski for the third time, and he'd finally achieve what so many before him could not, a win over the GOAT. In 2011, he swept the Arnold Classic and the Nemirov World Cup
in the plus 95 kilo division on both arms.
The years 2012 and 2013 were defined by his dominance at the A1 Russian Open, where he won the absolute titles on both arms, back to back.
As well as returning to the Nemirov World Cup, winning the 95 kilo plus left and right arm titles.
2013 would also be a significant year for Denis, as it would be the one where he got officially recognized as the top one puller on the planet. In 2015, he'd set the strict curl world record, lifting an insane 113 kilos, which stands to this day as the wide grip world record. It was truly unparalleled dominance at the time, but dominance has a way of attracting its challengers.
As Denis continued to rise, so did the competition.
Eager to test themselves against the man many viewed as the strongest. One of the first came in the form of Arsen Liliev. At the 2012 Russian National Championships, Liliev managed to give Denis a rare defeat, and for a moment questions began to emerge. Had Denis finally met his match? The answer to that question would come quite quickly, as a year later, Denis would shut down any doubts, flash-pinning Arsen and re-establishing himself as the man to beat. His next rival would be the American powerhouse Dave Chaffee. Dave possessed some of the most explosive side pressure the sport had ever seen, and every encounter between the two turned into a brutal war. Unlike most opponents, Dave could force Denis into long, exhausting battles, where victory was anything but guaranteed.
One notable instance were their two matches at Nemirov in 2013. The first time they faced, Dave Chaffee actually managed to win, thanks to Denis fouling out, but they would face again in the finals. And that would be the match that Denis recalled as the hardest of his life. Off the go, Dave would start driving to the side, and at first it seemed like Denis had him contained well. But Dave wouldn't give up, he kept driving more and more to the side, with Denis eventually getting stretched out and even being forced to go into a full King's move.
Very, very stretched out. They're both very far out. They're blocking it away from the pin, working it upwards. Look at this. There's no telling where this will go. Not being able to finish it. Chaffee is pushing it all the way. And every
But
time
Denis
he
would
lets go,
always come out on top.
Where Dave brought in unimaginable side pressure, Michael Todd brought something different to the table. His unconventional style and seemingly impossible defensive positions created problems that few managed to solve. At the 2011 Arnold Classic, Todd even managed to get the better of Denis. But years later, Denis would get another opportunity. At Vendetta All-Stars 46 in 2016, he settled the score and left little doubt about who was the man.
Literally overpowering Michael's King's move even while losing the wrist.
One of the most fascinating challengers came in the form of the Canadian No Limits Devon Larratt. By 2018, Devon Larratt had already built a reputation as one of the smartest and most versatile arm wrestlers in the history of the sport. He faced virtually every style imaginable, and he was also the man who was holding the #1 spot before Denis took it in 2013. So let's take a look at how this encounter unfolded. From the first go, it was obvious that Denis was at a huge strength advantage,
Flash-pinning Devon easily, and this pattern would go on to continue, with Denis blasting through Devon every single round.
only giving him the bonus round out of respect. This truly cemented Denis as the best.
Following their encounter, Larratt later famously stated this.
Like, there's nobody who's just held me like a kid and been like just do whatever, and like that's never happened before. He's maybe a good 20-30% stronger.
Later on, he would even send him the WAL Legacy Hammer, a symbolic acknowledgement of one champion to another. And yet, as memorable as these rivalries were, there was one man who stood above the rest. Andrei Pushkar. The rivalry between Denis Cyplenkov and Andrei Pushkar is one of the most significant in the history of the whole sport, defined by a decade of elite competition and a deep mutual respect. So here is the chronological breakdown of their battles during Denis's peak. The two faced off at almost every major tournament, with the results becoming increasingly competitive. In 2010, Denis defeated Pushkar on both the right and left hands at the Nemirov World Cup.
The right was very dominant for Denis, with Pushkar not being able to do anything. But the left arm saw much more of an intense development. At first, Pushkar's surge was enough to get a flash pin, but once Denis held Pushkar's initial hit, he would be in control, eventually winning with superior arm power. A year later, in 2011, the rivalry would go on to intensify. While Denis won two of their matches that year, Pushkar secured a notable 1-0 victory over Denis on the left arm during the Zloty Tour. They actually faced twice at that tournament. The first time it was a dominant flash pin for Pushkar, and in the finals, Andrei won thanks to Denis fouling out. In 2012 at the Russian Nationals, Pushkar and Denis would have one of the most insane wars the world had ever witnessed. To this day, this remains one of the most legendary armwrestling pieces of footage ever filmed, with over 10 million views on YouTube. So here is the breakdown. In the first round, Pushkar would obtain initial center dominance, driving to the pin pad, but Denis would, like in their previous matches, eventually contain, secure the cup and then win with superior bicep strength, reminiscent of their previous encounters. But Andrei wouldn't be discouraged, as in the second round, he'd repeat the formula, get a great setup, and off the go hit even harder than before.
In the straps, he'd crack Denis's wrist,
holding a superior pronator position, but with his own wrist cracked, Denis would eventually time a response, putting in massive side pressure surges, eventually overpowering Andrei once again.
2-0. It seemed like Denis would get the job done, but Andrei meant business.
The match exploded from the very start, with both athletes launching ferocious surges. Neither man was willing to give away anything, but Pushkar kept driving, pouring every ounce of power into the attack, and the pressure became so immense that Denis was resorting to a king's move. And for a moment, it looked as though Andrei might finally break through, and he came so agonizingly close. But close wasn't enough,
as Denis would once away come out as the champ. But the gap between them was narrowing every time.
The same year, at the A1 Russian Open, they'd have an excruciating battle. Andrei would once again first secure the center, but now he would also secure amazing hand control. Denis would be once again forced into a very uncomfortable position, but somehow, just to hold it on his arm power, it would be just too much to get the finish,
regaining in the end.
The left arm saw an even more dramatic story. The first round was actually a flash pin for Andrei.
But in the second round, Denis would, of course, like always, respond.
The third round would decide, with Denis being simply too much once again.
By 2013, Denis still held control in their key encounters, but that wouldn't be without its drawbacks.
He later described one of their battles at Nemirov as so physically demanding that it left him injured after a prolonged battle. Andrei was right there with him, but he simply couldn't get the win. He was so close, but so far away at the same time. But he'd continue pushing on, and by 2014, he'd finally cracked that barrier. At Russian Nationals in March 2014, a similar development to their previous matches would occur, with Pushkar getting the upper hand at first, Dennis with his wrist slightly cracked back, but not enough to not be able to get it back, with endurance and a stronger arm. But the defining moment would come in June of 2014 at the A1 Russian Open. Andrei Pushkar at that point was in incredible shape, smashing his way through everyone in the tournament to once again meet no other than Dennis in the finals. On the left hand, Andrei would at first provide a flash pin, but later get stopped. And after a grueling center table war, Dennis would of course win on endurance. Classic story. But on the right, something unbelievable happened, as Andrei would go on to deliver disgusting flash pins to Dennis Cıplenkov. Now it is true that Dennis was tired after his grueling match against Dave Chaffee. Dennis recounted a moment after Pushkar's win, where Pushkar said that he won the tournament, but he didn't beat Cıplenkov. A testament to how much they respected each other's strengths. But that doesn't take away anything from the fact that Andrei was truly improving. Because the next year in 2015, he'd smashed the competition once again, even flash pinning Dave Chaffee. Moving on into the future. By 2018, Dennis had defeated Devon Larratt and became a sort of a final boss in arm wrestling. But there was a question that needed to be answered. A question whether Andrei Pushkar would have what it takes to challenge Dennis once again. The two were scheduled for a massive right-hand super match at Vendetta All-Stars 50.
But sadly the match would never go underway.
In a final gesture of respect for his opponent and rival, Dennis presented the championship belt to Pushkar's family, as he left as the undefeated champion. This rivalry remains the backbone of Dennis's legacy, as he spent the majority of his career either preparing or fighting Pushkar, the man he considered his most enduring and honorable peer. But the journey would continue. In March 2019, Dennis was preparing for the prestigious Top 8 tournament, where only the best of the best could compete. But tragedy would strike once again. Years of extreme training, sustained pressure and long-term high blood pressure culminating in a life-threatening rupture near Dennis's kidney, and he would be forced into early retirement. In strength sports, or in any sport for that matter, competing at the highest level comes with a hidden cost. One that is rarely visible during the rise, but becomes clearer over time. The long-term strain placed on the body in pursuit of greatness was simply too much. But Dennis wouldn't be completely done just yet. In 2023, he would make a comeback in a legendary match against John Berzink, a rematch 13 years in the making.
So here's how it went.
Tension in the room, and there's the hit! Oh! Dennis is holding back! He's holding back, and
Dennis looks like in control, but John stops him! John's pronator still holds. John is trying to work that hand of Dennis right there, dead in the center.
Now Dennis's bicep is just going to explode all
Wow!
over John.
Now is a surge! John gets it! Wow!
Oh, what a catch! What a catch from John Brzezinski, but he's conceded in round one!
He'd overpower John both in the hand and the arm, and also superior endurance. It was truly a symbolic return to the highest stages. And later that year, he'd also go on to step up against the dominating Devon Larratt.
but that one would end in a loss for him. Dennis would later acknowledge that he wasn't able to prepare fully and was around 10% of his peak shape, entering the competition below his optimal condition. And in the years that follow, he would step away from top-level competition. Yet his presence in the sport has not faded at all. I would even say that he's now more popular than ever. For many, he remains the defining figure of his era, a reminder of what the highest level looked like, with many still hoping for his return to peak form. And whether that return ever comes remains uncertain. Only the future will tell. But still, the legacy he managed to leave behind is absolutely incredible, and he remains one of the greatest arm wrestlers to ever pull. Hello, I'm Blackbird. I thank you for watching this documentary. I would appreciate if you would like and subscribe, as this one truly took a lot of effort. And that's everything from me for today.
Never give up. Do sports, take care of yourselves. Wishing you victories, records, kindness, and peace.